receipt to Good afternoon, everybody. You must be knowing that this is the second block of accounting for managers, and in the block 2, this subject is as regards cost accounting. And in cost accounting, the first topic is understanding and classifying the cost. If you want to know about the cost, there are 3 similar things about cost. One is cost, another is price, another is value. They appears to be there. The meaning of all the 3 terms appears to be same, but they are not exactly same. They differ from each other, and they differ very substantially from each other, you can say. Cost means the amount of expenditure, actual or notional, incurred or attributable for a given thing. 4 components are involved in it: actual and notional expenditures, and expenditures which are incurred, and expenditures which are attributable. Actual expenditure means no need of explanation, because whatever expenses we have actually incurred for production of any commodity or of a unit, that is coming under the actual expenditure. And the notional expenditure, under the notional expenditures, the items like depreciation will come into picture. The depreciation, amortization, depletion, and dilapidation, all the 4 components are coming under that. Depreciation means any gradual diminution in the value of fixed assets due to wear and tear, obsolescence, or passage of time. That means if we are engaging a machinery for production of any unit, then to the extent of depreciation written off on such particular machinery is to be allocated to the cost unit or cost center, and that will come under the notional expenditure. And the 3rd and 4th component about the cost is amount of expenditure incurred and attributable. Incurred means whatever expenses are firmly incurred for the purpose. It may be payable, it may be already paid. Payable means it is otherwise called the outstanding expenses. Outstanding expenses means the expenses due but not paid. Take the example of rent for the month of March. Rent for the month of March is payable on 31st of March. If it is not paid on 31st of March, then from the next day onwards, it became outstanding or the rent payable. But the rent is incurred. Expenses incurred, but the payment is not made. That is called expenses incurred. If the cash is paid, it's okay and fine. Even if it is not paid, still then it will be a part of the cost unit or the cost center. Then attributable. Attributable means even if it is not incurred, but it can be attributed for the purpose, then that has also to be formed part of the cost of the unit. So all the 4 components compositely forms the part of the cost of an unit. The amount of expenditure which is actual and notional, incurred and attributable for a given thing, that is called cost. Then what is price? Price means the amount of money paid or payable for buying of any commodity or for enjoying of any services. I am reiterating, the amount of money paid or payable for buying of any commodity or for enjoying of any services is called price. If the money is paid instantly, still then it will remain as price. If the money is not paid, but the obligation is created, still then it will be treated as the price of the product. Suppose we have purchased a mobile handset. The mobile handset, the price of the mobile handset is say 10,000. Even if we have paid 10,000 rupees at the counter at the time of buying of the mobile, the price will be 10,000. Even if we have not paid anything towards the transaction, towards buying of the mobile, the payment is deferred for a subsequent date. The price of the same 10,000 will remain, which will be paid in a later date. That is called price of the product. The third component, which seems similar to that of the cost, is value. Value is something different. There are two types of values. One is value in exchange and another is value in use. Value in exchange is just exactly similar with that of the price. Whatever money, suppose you are buying a pen by paying 5 rupees. A use and throw pen, the amount of which is 5 rupees. So you can say the value in exchange of that particular pen is rupees 5. Value in use. Value in use is something important, vital. That is, that has been nicely explained by Adam Smith in the book called Paradox of Value. He has given the example of mother's milk for a newborn baby. Can you evaluate what is the value of that? He has also given the example of a glass of water to a very thirsty person in the desert. Can you evaluate? It's just not possible. It depends upon the degrees of necessity, the degrees of urgency, and the degrees of utility the product carries, depending upon the situation and environment. That is called value in use. Suppose you are appearing a very important examination of the university and your pen is running shortage of ink and you don't have the alternate pen. And you have asked your fellow examinee to part with his or her pen with you for some time till the examination is over. And he has given you a use and throw pen, the market price of which is hardly 5 rupees, but he has demanded 100 rupees from you. You can, without any grumbling, without any bargain with the person, you can pay 100 rupees and take the use of that pen which he or she is parting with you. Because the situation, the urgency of the situation demands like that. So the value in use and value in exchange are different from each other, and they are also different from cost and price in the relative terms. So if we discuss about the cost in details, there is what I said, that cost means the amount of expenditure incurred at actual and notional, incurred or attributable for a given thing. For that, we need to study the cost accounting. Cost accounting is a branch of accounting and has been developed due to limitations of the financial accounting. And it is also stated that cost accounting, you can see here, cost accounting is the classifying, recording, and appropriate allocation of expenditure for the determination of the costs of products or services and for the presentation of suitably arranged data for the process of control and guidance of the management. It includes the ascertainment of the cost of every order, job, contract, process, service, or unit as may be appropriate. It deals with the cost of production, selling, and distribution. This is introduction of cost accounting. Next, cost accounting is the application of accounting and costing principles, methods, and techniques in the ascertainment of costs and analysis of savings or excess cost incurred as compared with the previous experience or with standards. Thus, cost accounting relates to the collection, classification, ascertainment of cost and its accounting and control relating to the various elements of cost. It establishes budget and standard cost and actual cost of operation, process, departments, or products, and the analysis of variances, profitability, and social use of funds. This is about the introduction of cost accounting. Then if you go to the features of cost accounting, it has got 6 features, 6 important features we can say. The first one is, it is a process of accounting for costs. Second, it records income and expenditure relating to production of goods and services. Third, it provides statistical data on the basis of which future estimates are prepared and quotations are submitted. Fourth, it is concerned with cost ascertainment and cost control. Fifth, it establishes budgets and standards so that actual cost may be compared to find out deviations or variances, if any. Sixth, it involves the preparation of right information to the right person at the right time so that it may be helpful to the management for planning, control, and decision making. This is about the features of cost accounting. Then if we talk about the objectives of cost accounting, then the first objective is to ascertain the cost per unit of the different products manufactured and business concerned. Second, to provide a correct analysis of cost both by process or operation and different elements of cost. Third, to disclose source of wastage, whether of material, time, or expenses, or in the use of machinery. Fourth, to provide requisite data and serve as a guide for fixing prices of products manufactured or services rendered. Fifth, to ascertain the probability of each of the products and advise management as to how this profit can be maximized. To exercise effective control of stock of raw materials, work in process, finished goods, in order to minimize block of capital. To advise management on future expansion policies and proposed capital projects. Next, the project and interrupt data for management, planning, evaluation of performance, and control. These are the objectives of cost accounting. Next, we can look about the identifies profitable activity, the importance of cost accounting. It identifies the main objective of the organization. This is about the importance of cost accounting. And the importance, after the importance of cost accounting, we can go to the advantages of cost accounting. The advantages of cost accounting is, the first one is profitable and unprofitable activities are disclosed and steps can be taken to eliminate or reduce those activities which are not profitable for the organization. That means when the analysis is over and we are in a comfortable position to ascertain that this is profitable to us and this is not profitable to us, then we can be in a comfortable position to eliminate which is not profitable to the organization and its production may be stopped for the concern. The next advantage of cost accounting is it enables a concern to measure the efficiency and then to maintain and improve it. The third advantage is it provides information upon which estimates and tenders are based. Whenever an organization is going to accept a tender, when a quotation call notice is there and we need to submit our tender, then we must, before submission of the tenders, we must analyze the involvement of cost thoroughly, and that can only be done through cost accounting. The fourth one is it guides future production policies. Fifth one is it helps in increasing profits by disclosing the sources of loss. Next, it enables a periodical distribution of profit or losses. In case of financial accounting, what happens? The profit or losses is determined on financial year wise. On financial year basis, the profit and losses are being determined. But in case of cost accounting, it is determined on the basis of products, on the basis of cost units, on the basis of cost centers. So it is more analytical than that of the financial accounting. 7. It detects the exact cause of a decrease or an increase in profit or loss, which is not possible in case of profit and loss account prepared under financial accounting. This is the added advantage of a cost accounting. Next, it enables the creditor and investors to judge the financial strength of the company. They are the external users of accounting information, and through the cost accounting information, it enables the creditors and investors to judge the financial strength. Next, helpful to the government to make analysis, the critical analysis of the health of the organization can be ascertained by the government through the cost accounting of the organization. It is helpful to the consumers also. Efficiency of public enterprises. Then it furnishes the reliable data for comparing costs in different periods for different volume of output. These are the different advantages of cost accounting. Then we can think about the scopes of cost accounting. As regards scopes of cost accounting, first we can look to the cost ascertainment. Cost ascertainment means it deals with the collection and analysis of expenses, the measurement of production for the different stages of manufacturing, and linking of the production with expenses. That is called cost ascertainment. Then cost accounting. It is the process of accounting, as it is already said, that it is the process of accounting for cost, which begins with recording of expenditure and ends with preparation of statistical data. It is a formal mechanism by means of which cost of production or services are ascertained and controlled. Then cost control. Cost control means it is the guidance and regulation of executing action of the cost of operating an undertaking. It aims at guiding the actual towards the line of targets. And it also regulates the actual if they deviate or vary from the targeted figure. Costs can be controlled by standard costing, budgetary control, proper presentation and reporting of cost data or cost audit. Cost is defined as the amount of expenditure incurred or attributable to a given thing or to ascertain the cost of giving thing. As already explained earlier in the initial stage, there are totally four components are involved in it. Amount of expenditure, actual or notional, incurred or attributable. Cost is a measurement in monetary terms of the amount of resources used for the purpose of production of goods or rendering of services. Manufacturing of goods or rendering services involves consumption of resources. Cost is measured by the sacrifice made in terms of resources or price paid to acquire goods and services. The type of cost is often rendered in the costing system depends on the purpose for which cost is incurred. It is the amount of resources given up in exchange for some goods or services. The resources given up or sacrificed are expressed in monetary terms. For example, material cost is the price of materials acquired for manufacturing a product. This is about the terminologies of cost accounting. Then the objective for which the costs are computed is also important. For example, if the purpose is to fix selling price, then the total cost is considered. For valuation of stock, cost means cost of production only. For the valuation of work in progress, factory cost is used for valuation of finished goods and cost of production. Cost of production is used for purpose of ascertaining the factory cost. If we look to the statement of cost or the element of cost, we can find out there are different components are involved in it, and the different components are: one is the prime cost. Prime cost is the combination of three things. First one is direct material, second one is direct labor, and the third one is I'll start after 2 minutes. Just wait. Let us start the session again. We are discussing about the elements of cost. Elements of cost means the way in which the cost has been classified. If we look to the first type of classification of cost, then it will come by nature. The classification of cost is made by nature. When the cost is classified by nature, three components come into picture. They are material, labor, and expenses. Material means substance from which the product is made or produced. That is called material. Let me reiterate. Substance from which the product is made or produced. That is called material. Take the example of a table. If we are taking into consideration of a wooden table, then wood is the prime material through which the table can be produced. So that is called the material. Material is that means the wood is the substance here from which the table is being prepared. If we look to the material, then the material is of two types. One is the direct material and the other one is the indirect material. Direct material is that material which is directly allocable or identifiable in the units produced. That is called direct material. Take the example of a table, a wooden table. When a table is taken into consideration, then by measuring the table, we can say that how many CFTs of wood is being consumed or is being used for preparation of that piece of table, which is taken in, which is there in our front for purpose of examination. So wood can be taken as a direct material here. Other than wood, for preparation of a table, there must be obviously use of certain other materials like gums, nails, paints, etc. Those are also material. They are being consumed for purpose of bringing the table into its finished shape. But those materials, the volume of those materials cannot be directly attributable or allocable or identifiable in the units produced. By externally viewing the table, you cannot say that what is the amount of nails or how many nails have been used for bringing this table into the final shape. How much of gum is being consumed to bring the table into its final shape. How much of paints are being used for bringing the table into its final shape. So the wood is material, the paint is material, the nail is material, the gum or the adhesive is also material. But the last three, adhesive or gum, and nail and the paint, they are coming under the indirect material, but the wood will be coming under the direct material. So when you talk about the material can be of two types. One is direct material and the other one is the indirect material. The second component of cost, so far as the classification as regards the nature is concerned, it comes as labor. Labor means for conversion of raw materials into finished goods, human effort is needed. That is obvious. Without human effort, it's not possible to produce anything. So that labor cost, that human effort is called the labor cost. The human effort which is required for conversion of raw material into finished products, when it is expressed in monetary terms, that is called the labor cost. Just like material, labor cost can also be of two types. One is direct material and the other one is the indirect material. Direct labor and indirect labor. Direct labor means the labor cost which is specifically and conveniently traceable in the units produced, which can be conveniently and specifically, I'm reiterating, which can be conveniently and specifically traceable in the units produced. That is called direct labor cost. Take the example of a carpenter who is manufacturing a table. When a table is manufactured, the wood is being converted into table, and it is the duty of the carpenter to convert the wood into a table. Suppose one carpenter is taking 1 day time, 1 day complete time for bringing a table into its final shape, converting the wood into the table. And his charges or his labor, his wages per day is 600 rupees. If he's taking 1 day time, then this 600 would be the direct labor cost for the table. If he's taking 2 days time for bringing the table into its final shape, then it would be 600 into 2. That means 1,200 would be the direct labor cost for purpose of that table, which is a final production unit. And what is indirect labor then? Suppose in that particular factory where the table is being manufactured, other wooden items are also being manufactured like chairs, sofa set, cots, dressing table, etc., etc. And there is one foreman or supervisor who is looking after all the sections where all the items are being table, chair, cots, sofa sets, dressing table, etc., etc. are being prepared. Suppose he is getting 30,000 as remuneration or as wages per month. Can you allocate or can you say that what is his labor cost towards a particular piece of table for which the carpenter has taken 2 days labor cost? It's just not possible. So just like material, direct material and indirect material, so which cannot be conveniently or specifically allocable to the units produced, it is called indirect labor. Just like the example given, the salary or the wages paid to the foreman or paid to the supervisor who is supervising different units of that particular organization where so many products are being manufactured. The wage of the carpenter is a direct wages, whereas the wage of the salary of the supervisor or the foreman would be an indirect labor. The reason being, the second one is not directly allocable or attributable or identifiable in the units produced. Whereas in case of the first one, that means in case of the wages of the carpenter, that can be directly allocable. If he's taking 1 day, then the labor cost would be 600. If he's taking 2 days, then the labor cost would be 1,200. That means 600 multiplied with 2. And accordingly, the direct labor cost can be jolly well determined. The next component or the third component which is involved in the classification of cost so far as the classification according to nature is concerned, that is called expenses. Expenses means you can say direct expense or indirect expense. The same connotation, just like direct labor and indirect labor, direct material and indirect material. Accordingly, direct labor and direct expense and indirect expense. Here, if we look to the direct expense and indirect expense, which can be directly and conveniently and wholly allocated to the specific unit or the cost center. Take the example of a particular cost unit or cost center, just like a table, what the example which was given to you just a few minutes back. If certain expenses which are incurred and that expense is directly allocable with the units produced with that table, then that can be treated as a direct expense. And if it is not directly allocable or attributable or identifiable with the units produced, that can be taken as indirect expense. Take the example of factory rent. Take the example of electricity. Take the example of insurance charges. We cannot say that what is the insurance premium, what is the exact amount of insurance premium paid for that piece of table which is being produced in the organization where so many other products are being manufactured or produced simultaneously. If we are paying rent of 30,000 for the factory, or we are paying rent of 30,000 towards the organization where so many products are being manufactured at a time, can we say what is the amount of rent for that particular piece of table which is being manufactured there in the table section? It is just not possible. So that comes under direct expense and indirect expense. Direct expense means the expense which is directly allocable or attributable or identifiable with the units produced, and which is not possible in case of direct allocation or attribution or identification. That will come under the indirect expenses. And the examples of indirect expenses would be the factory rent, would be the office rent, would be the establishment expenses, would be the insurance premium, would be the electricity charges. All these things will come under indirect expenses. Electricity charges in case of fabrication units. In case of fabrication units, the electric charges can be to some extent direct, can be contributed or can be allocated towards the direct cost, sorry, direct expenses. Because suppose in case of steel fabrication units, the major component of expenses would be the electrical charges. In case of electrical charges, from our past experience, we know that how many units have been consumed for making welding, for welding of how many quintals or how many kgs of steels. In that case, if this by taking the weight of the commodity or taking the weight of the unit, cost unit of the material produced, we can generally well allocate that how much would have been the consumption of electricity unit for that particular unit, and accordingly the electricity cost can be allocated. So this is a very solitary example which is coming under the exception. But normally the electricity consumption or the cost of power and fuel would come under the indirect expenses. Similarly, there is another way of classifying the cost, that is on the basis of activities. When the cost is classified on the basis of activities, it is manufacturing and production cost, commercial cost, which comes under, which includes the administrative, selling and distribution overheads. Let me say one thing. Let me make one thing clear here, that all indirect expenses are otherwise called the overheads. All indirect expenses are called overheads. Then come to the next way of classification of cost, that is on the basis of behavior. When the cost is classified on the basis of behavior, it is coming as a fixed cost, variable cost and semi-variable cost. Fixed cost is that cost which remains constant irrespective of the volume of production to a certain degree and for a certain period of time. That is called fixed cost. And the variable cost is the cost which varies directly and proportionately with the volume of production. That is called variable cost. And the semi-variable cost is partly variable and partly fixed. That is called semi-variable cost. Next is cost can be classified by time. When the cost is classified by time, then it comes under the historical cost and predetermined cost. Then the cost can also be classified on the basis of the managerial decision making. When the cost is classified on the basis of managerial decision making, it may be the marginal cost, out-of-pocket cost, different cost, sum cost, notional cost, opportunity cost, replacement cost, avoidable and unavoidable cost. These are the different classifications of cost from different viewpoints. Then costing practices. Costing practices includes preparation of cost sheet, output and job costing, contract costing, process costing. These are the different methods of costing, you can say. And preparation of cost sheet, that means the different elements of cost are precisely formed or presented, rather it is presented, different elements of cost are presented in a systematic manner to determine the cost of production, cost of sale, profit, ultimately by deducting the cost of product, total cost from the selling price, and that would be the preparation of cost sheet. If we go to the preparation of cost sheet, when we prepare the cost sheet, when we go for preparation of the cost sheet, the different components involved in preparation of the cost sheet is the same thing: the direct material, direct labor, and direct expenses. It will form the prime cost. The prime cost of a product includes direct material, direct labor, and direct expenses. That means all the three direct items, material, labor, and expenses, form part of the prime cost. Because that is the very major component of the cost of production of any particular unit. You can say direct material, direct labor, it covers about 90% or about 50%, more than 50% of the total cost is being compounded or being formed through direct material, direct labor, and direct expenses. Then, after determination of the prime cost, which is the combination of direct material and direct labor and direct expenses, we can add the factory overhead there too. And by adding the factory overhead to the prime cost, we can determine the works cost. Work cost includes the prime cost as well as the factory overhead. And factory overhead, what overhead means? All the indirect expenses. It means factory overhead means all the indirect expenses relating to factory, relating to the production of the unit, particularly which is being consumed or which is being done, which is being expended in the factory itself where the unit is being produced. Factory overheads includes, if you can look to this, what are the inclusions of the factory overhead? Here you can see factory overheads includes wages of foremen, factory lighting, storekeepers' wages, oil and water charges, factory rent, factory repairs and renewals, depreciation of machinery. Depreciation can be of two types. Depreciation may be charged on the machinery, depreciation may be charged on the furniture and fixture. Furnitures and fixtures are normally used in the office, in the administrative block, whereas the machineries are being used in the factory. Depreciation component on the machinery, electrical installation, etc., which is being used in the factory itself, forms part of the factory overhead. And a depreciation on furniture and fixture, depreciation on other items which are being used in the office, that has to be coming under the administrative overhead. It will not form part of the factory overhead. That has to be taken into consideration. That has to be due, weightage has to be given at the time of preparation of the cost sheet. Otherwise, it would be a mess. So, factory overhead, when it is included with the prime cost, that forms part of the works cost here. And after determination of the works cost, we need to include the administrative overheads. That means indirect expenses relating to administration. That has to be included with the work cost. And after inclusion of that, the resultant would be the cost of production. You can see here what are the items coming under the administrative overhead. Here, administrative overhead includes office lighting. It may be office rent. It may be office repair and renewals. It may be depreciation of office equipment, what I was telling just a few minutes back. Depreciation of office equipments, office furniture and fixtures, etc. That will form part of the administrative overhead. Then manager's salary, office stationery, telephone bill, internet bill, postage and telegram, traveling and conveyance. All these things will form part of the administrative overhead. When the administrative overhead is included with that of the works cost, look here, when the administrative overhead is included with the work cost, that became the cost of production. Cost of production means what is the amount spent for bringing the unit into its final sale. It includes direct material, direct expenses in form of prime cost. Then factory overhead is added there too, and it becomes the works cost. And the administrative overhead, when it is included with the works cost, that becomes the cost of production. And that cost of production is the cost per unit or cost of the units produced in the organization. But that is not the end by itself. There may be selling and distribution overhead. Selling and distribution overhead means how to make the goods sellable. That is also a major component of expenses which have to be included in the cost of production before determining the total cost or the cost of sale. Selling and distribution overhead includes carriage outward, that means transportation outward, traveling expenses, salesman's salary. It may include salesman's commission even. Then advertising, warehouse charges where the goods have been stored after it is being manufactured and before it is being distributed or before it is being sold out to the customers. That is called warehouse charges. All these things, if there is any insurance in the warehouse charges, that means insurance of the warehouse, that will also form part of the selling and distribution overhead. The commission and the wages or the salary of the salesman, that will also form part of the selling and distribution overhead. If there is any distribution of samples, if there is any advertisement expenses, advertisement is a deferred revenue expenditure, but when it is allocated particularly towards the cost, that allocated part of the advertising expenses will form part of the selling and distribution overhead. So when the items coming under selling and distribution overhead, they are added to the cost of production, that becomes the total cost of the product, which is otherwise called the cost of sales. And the cost of sales is the final cost in respect of the production of any unit. And when the selling price, which is more than the cost of sale, that is deducted from the cost of sale, the differential figure would be the profit. At times it may so happen that the selling price may be less than the cost of sales. When the selling price is less than the cost of sales, it will definitely result into loss. So to determine the profit or loss, that has to be added or deducted from the total cost of sales. So in order to determine the profit or loss from any unit, the selling price or the sales has to be deducted from the cost of sales. The resultant would be, if it is positive, then the result is profit. If it is negative, then the result is obviously loss. Let us look to the numerical example given here. For preparation of a cost sheet, here some data have been provided here. The direct material is 1 lakh rupees. That means the volume, the consumption of direct material is amounting to 1 lakh. The direct wages is 30,000. Wages of foreman is 2,500. Factory lighting is 1,500. Office lighting is 1,000. Storekeeper's wages is 1,000. Oil and water charges is 500. Factory rent is 5,000. Office rent is 2,500. Repair and renewals of factory is 3,500, and repair and renewals of office is 500. Transport to reserve is 10,000. Dividend 2,000. Depreciation on machinery is 5,000, and depreciation on office equipment is 1,000. Manager's salary is 5,000. Office stationery is 500. Telephone charges is 1,000. Salesman's salary is 2,000, traveling expenses is 1,000, advertising is 1,500, carriage outward is 1,000, income tax is 10,000, warehouse charges is 1,500, postage and telegram is 1,000. From this, we need to prepare a cost sheet, which is otherwise called the statement of cost, which is being prepared here. Direct material, 1 lakh, it is directly given in the question and taken here. Direct material and direct labor, which forms part of the prime cost. No direct expense is given in the question, otherwise it would have been formed part of the prime cost. In absence of any direct expense, only the direct material and direct labor has been included in the prime cost. Direct material is 1 lakh, direct labor is 30,000, so it comes to 1,30,000 prime cost from the given question. Then factory overhead is added. Wages of the foreman, 2,500. Factory lighting, 1,500. Storekeeper's wages, 1,000. Oil and water charges, 500. Factory rent, 5,000. Factory repair and renewals, 3,500. Depreciation on machinery, 5,000. And the sum total of all the items, all the 7 items under factory overhead comes to 19,000. When that 19,000 of factory overhead is added to the prime cost of 1,30,000, that became 1,49,000, and that 1,49,000 is called the works cost or factory cost, you can say. Works cost or factory cost. That is authorized. Factory cost and work cost, both the things can be used interchangeably. Then we need to add the administrative overhead to the works cost for determination of the cost of production. In the given question, there are different items of administrative overheads. The first item is office lighting. Office lighting, as given in the question, it is 1,000. Office rent, as given in the question, is 2,500. Office repair and renewals, it is 500. Depreciation on office equipment. Depreciation on machinery, you look here. Depreciation on machinery, it is taken here, that is 5,000. And depreciation on office equipment, that is 1,000, it is taken here under the administrative overhead. Manager's salary, 5,000. Office stationery, 500. Telephone bill, 1,000. Postage and telegram, 1,000. So there are 8 items here coming under the administrative overhead, the summation of which is coming 12,500. So the administrative overhead here is 12,500 that has to be added to the works cost. Works cost was 1,49,000. When 1,49,000 is added with 12,500 that administrative overhead, the cost of production became 1,61,500. That is the cost of production. Then cost of production has to be included. The selling and distribution overhead has to be included to the cost of production to determine the total cost or cost of sales. So what are the items from the given question? We can determine the items coming under the selling and distribution overhead. The first item is carriage outward. That means transportation outward for taking the delivery of goods to the doorstep of the customers, to the consumers. That is 1,000 given in the question. Then traveling expenses. You may incur traveling expenses for collection of dues from your debtors. There may be several debtors which are called sundry debtors. If someone is going for collection of dues from them, whatever traveling expenses are incurred, that will obviously come under the selling and distribution overhead. If the salesman is traveling from here from one place to the other for purpose of propagating, for purpose of collecting orders, etc., his traveling expenses will come under the selling and distribution overhead. Otherwise, these traveling expenses will come under administrative overhead. Then traveling expenses was 1,000 here, so that is disclosed here at 1,000. Salesman's salary, it is 2,000 as given in the question, so 2,000 taken here. Then advertisement, 1,500. Advertisement is a deferred revenue expenditure. If the advertisement expenses is heavy, normally in the initial years, the advertisement expenses are incurred. That is being amortized in a period of time, depending upon the utility within which the benefit of advertisement will be derived. So basing on that, the amortized part of the advertising expenses can be taken into the selling and distribution overhead. Here in the question it is given as 1,500, so we have taken 1,500 as advertising expenses. Then warehouse charges as given in the question it is 1,500, so that is taken as 1,500. So the summation of all the 5 figures, carriage outward, traveling expenses, salesman salary, advertising, and warehouse charges, is coming to 7,000. That 7,000 is nothing but the selling and distribution overhead. That selling and distribution overhead ought to be added to the cost of production. Earlier, the cost of production was 1,61,500. When that 1,61,500 plus 7,000 towards the selling and distribution overhead, it comes to 1,68,500. And that 1,68,500 is the total cost or the cost of sales. 1,68,500. Here, in the right-hand side column, which is blank, that is the cost per unit. Had it been given that how many units are being produced here, 100 or 1,000 or something like that, then that has to be divided. Each element of cost has to be divided by the unit produced, and that would have been the cost per unit. If it is 100, then it would have been, all the items would have been divided by 100. If it is 1,000, then all the units would have been divided by 1,000. That would have been the cost per unit. And the cost per unit can also be prepared on the same component, same element of cost, like prime cost, work cost, then cost of production and cost of sales. Here, since the unit figure is not given in the question, we cannot afford to prepare the cost sheet depending upon the for purpose of unit cost. So in the question, it is also given. If you look to the question, it is given that the sales, the total sales is given as, look here, the total sales is given here as wages, foreman, storekeepers, repair sales. Here, sales is 2 lakhs. When the sales is 2 lakhs, that has to be deducted from the total cost of the cost of sales which has been arrived at 1,68,500, and the profit automatically it is being arrived at 31,500, which is the resultant of sales minus cost of sale. You must be seeing that few items which have been given in the question are not taken into consideration while preparing the cost sheet, and those items are dividend. You look here, the dividend is given in the question like 2,000, and here another item is given as 10,000 as income tax. Those 2 items, although it is given in the question, they do not form part of the cost sheet. Now, there may be a spontaneous question that why those 2 items are not included in the cost sheet, although they are the expenses. They are expenses, obviously, but they are expenses which are purely financial in nature. Dividend means the amount of profit which is available for distribution among the shareholders. That means when the organization earns profit, a part of the profit is being distributed towards its shareholders as against their return on investment. It has nothing to do with the cost of production of the product. So since it has nothing to do, it doesn't form part of cost accounting, since it has nothing to do with the cost accounting, costing of the product, it is not included in the cost sheet. So also the case of income tax. Income tax is an appropriation to profit. That means whenever there is any income, the tax has to be paid thereon as per the specified rate by the government. And that income tax, it has nothing to do with the production of any product or unit. So it doesn't form part of cost accounting. And this is the reason why these two items, you can say that they are purely the financial, those 2 items are purely in the nature of financial accounting, financial in nature, and they have nothing to do with the cost accounting figures. As a result of this, these 2 items have been completely omitted and eliminated while preparing the cost sheet. In the cost sheet, all the components have been taken: direct material, direct labor, factory overhead, selling and distribution overhead, administrative overhead, selling and distribution overhead, and finally the cost of sale is being arrived at. And from the cost of sales, when the cost of goods sold is being deducted, we have arrived at the profit, and the profit here is 31,500. When had it been given with the units produced, if the number of units produced in this question had it been given, then we could have filled out the right hand side column of the solution here. But since it is not given, it is not, we are not able to prepare that. But for your reference, you can note that if it is 100, then all the components of cost have to be divided by 100 to determine the unit price. If it is 1,000, then all the components have to be divided by 1,000 to determine the unit price. If it is 10,000, then all the units have to be divided by 10,000, and accordingly, the unit cost would have been arrived at. And finally, the profit per unit would have been arrived, just like 31,500 is being arrived as a total profit from the entire production of the product, but for which we have prepared the cost sheet here. So this is about the element of the preparation of the statement of cost, which is otherwise called the cost sheet. And the cost sheet, it helps here in an elaborate manner. It is given for your reference that when there is opening stock and closing stock in respect of raw materials, in respect of work in process, in respect of finished goods, that has also to be taken into consideration while preparing the cost sheet. Opening stock and closing stock of raw materials, they will form part of your time cost. And opening stock and closing stock of work in progress will form part of your factory overhead. And opening stock and closing stock of your finished product will form part of your administrative cost for determination of the cost of production. So all these things have to be taken into consideration while preparation of the cost sheet. And the cost sheet is otherwise known as the statement of cost from which we can determine the profit or loss from the cost center or cost unit or the units produced. Thank you. Thank you all.